Your homemade clothes might be charming on a farm, but at Westridge Academy we pride ourselves on sophistication and style, sneered Headmistress Sinclair, her manicured fingers tapping impatiently on her mahogany desk as 17-year-old Olivia Bennett clutched her worn canvas backpack. But 2 weeks later, when a gleaming private jet emblazoned with Bennett Agricultural Enterprises landed on the school's private airstrip, the headmistress's condescending smile vanished as a striking woman in an impeccably tailored designer suit descended the stairs, followed by a team of executives. I'm Catherine Bennett, CEO of Bennett Agricultural Enterprises and Olivia's mother. I believe we need to discuss your school's treatment of students before our company finalizes its $5 million donation to any preparatory academy this semester. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Westridge Academy stood as a monument to privilege and prestige nestled in the lush Connecticut countryside. Its historic brick buildings and perfectly manicured grounds had educated America's elite for over a century. The school prided itself on producing graduates who went on to Ivy League universities and eventually took their places among the nation's political and business leaders. The Academy's reputation was carefully maintained by Headmistress Victoria Sinclair, whose 20-year tenure had been marked by an increasingly exclusive admissions policy and a rigid adherence to what she called traditional standards of excellence. At 53, Headmistress Sinclair carried herself with the confident authority of someone who had never had her decisions questioned. Her office reflected her personality, immaculate, traditional, and intimidating. Oak paneling lined the walls, adorned with portraits of distinguished alumni and framed accolades. Her desk, positioned to ensure she looked down on anyone seated across from her, was always perfectly organized, not a paper out of place. The Academy's culture mirrored its headmistress. Appearance and pedigree were valued above all else. Students carried designer bags, wore subtle but expensive jewelry, and spoke with the practiced confidence that came from generations of privilege. Into this rarefied world came Olivia Bennett, admitted based on her perfect academic record and exceptional standardized test scores, despite not coming from the usual feeder schools that supplied most of Westridge's student body. March had brought an unseasonable chill to Westridge Academy's grounds. Students hurried between buildings wrapped in cashmere sweaters and designer coats, huddling in groups to share weekend plans involving skiing trips and shopping excursions to New York City. In the junior class hallway, a group of girls congregated. Around their lockers, their voices dropping to whispers as Olivia Bennett approached. At 17, Olivia moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to navigating her way through challenging situations. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothes neat but notably different from her peers, well-made but clearly not designer brands. Most striking were her hands, strong and capable, with short nails and calluses that spoke of physical work unfamiliar to most Westridge students. "Is that another homemade outfit, Olivia?" called out Madison Wells, the unofficial queen of the junior class. Her voice carried down the hallway, drawing attention from other students. "My housekeeper has a dress just like that. Did your mom get the pattern from her?" Laughter rippled through the gathering crowd as Olivia continued retrieving books. From her locker, her expression neutral, despite the flush creeping up her neck. "Actually," Olivia replied evenly, "I made it myself. The fabric is organic cotton we grow on our farm. It's sustainable and environmentally responsible." Madison exchanged glances with her friends, her smile widening. "How quaint. Very rustic of you, but you know there's a dress code at Westridge, even if it's not officially written down." She gestured to her own perfectly coordinated outfit, the subtle Chanel logo visible on her ballet flats. "Some of us have standards to maintain." Olivia closed her locker, turning to face Madison directly. I understand standards perfectly. Mine just happened to include substance over labels. Before Madison could respond, the bell rang, and students began dispersing to their classes. As Olivia walked away, she heard Madison stage whisper to her friends, "Just because they let in scholarship cases doesn't mean they have to dress like they're still milking cows." More laughter followed her down the hallway, but Olivia kept her head high, years of facing similar comments having built her resilience. What Madison and her friends didn't know, what none of them knew, was exactly what kind of farm the Bennetts operated, or the true nature of their agricultural business. In advanced placement chemistry, Olivia took her usual seat in the front row, spreading out her meticulously organized notes. The class was her favorite, combining her natural aptitude for science with practical applications she could relate to her family's work. Mr. Harrington, the chemistry teacher, was one of the few faculty members who seemed to genuinely appreciate Olivia's contributions, valuing her unique perspective and hands-on experience with agricultural chemistry. Today we'll be discussing nitrogen fixation and its importance in agricultural applications, Mr. Harrington began, his eyes briefly meeting Olivia's with a small smile of acknowledgement. Some of you might find this particularly relevant to your backgrounds. From the back of the room came a barely disguised snicker, or irrelevant to most of us who don't plan on being farmers, muttered Tyler Richardson, son of a hedge fund manager and Madison's on-again, off-again boyfriend. Mr. Harrington raised an eyebrow. Actually, Mr. Richardson, understanding the biochemical processes that feed the world might be relevant to everyone, regardless of career path. He turned back to the whiteboard. Perhaps especially to those privileged enough to have never had to think about where their food comes from. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Olivia felt a rush of gratitude for the teacher's subtle defense, but knew it would only fuel further comments once class ended. She was right. As students filed out after the bell, Madison and her friends were waiting. In the hallway, "Olivia!" Madison called, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We're all going shopping in the city this weekend for the spring formal. You should come. We could help you find something appropriate. My treat, of course." Her friends giggled behind her, the offer clearly meant to humiliate rather than include. "Thank you, but I already have plans," Olivia replied calmly. "My family has a business meeting I need to attend." This brought a fresh round of laughter. "A business meeting at your family farm?" Tyler joined in, his arms slung casually around Madison's shoulders. "What's on the agenda? Which chickens to slaughter first?" Olivia shouldered her backpack, refusing to show how the comments stung. "Actually, it's a meeting with our research and development team about our new drought-resistant seed technology, but I'm sure deciding which chickens to slaughter would be beyond your capabilities, Tyler." She walked away before they could respond, leaving momentary silence in her wake. Before the group recovered and resumed their mockery, now safely out of her earshot. It was a small victory, but Olivia had learned to appreciate those. She'd also learned when to engage and when to simply move on. The rest of the day followed a similar pattern. Subtle jabs in class, more overt mockery in the hallways, and always the underlying message that she didn't belong in their world. By the time the final bell rang, Olivia was exhausted from maintaining her composed exterior. She made her way to the parking lot where most students were climbing into luxury SUVs or sports cars, some with private drivers waiting. Olivia walked past them all to the far corner of the lot where her vehicle waited, a mud-splattered pickup truck that had seen at least a decade of hard work before becoming her transportation to school. The truck had been a deliberate choice. Her parents had offered to buy her something newer, less conspicuous, but Olivia had refused. If she was going to be an outsider, she wouldn't hide it. As she climbed into the driver's seat, she noticed Madison and her group watching from beside Madison's gleaming Range Rover, their expressions a mixture of mockery and genuine bewilderment. At someone who would willingly drive such a vehicle, Olivia started the engine, its reliable rumble a comforting sound amid the sea of luxury vehicles, and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home took her away from the manicured estates, surrounding Westridge, and eventually onto country roads that wound through Connecticut's rural landscapes. As the scenery changed, Olivia felt the tension draining from her shoulders. Here, among fields and farmhouses, she didn't have to defend her existence or explain her worth. After 30 minutes, she turned onto a long private drive marked by a discreet sign reading Bennett Agricultural Research Facility. The gravel road stretched for nearly a mile before the family home came into view, a sprawling farmhouse that had been in the Bennett family for generations, though substantially modernized over the years. Behind it stood several large buildings that, to the casual observer, might look like ordinary barns and silos. In reality, they housed some of the most advanced agricultural research facilities in the country. Olivia parked next to several other trucks and work vehicles, noting that her mother's car was still gone, likely still at the main corporate offices in Hartford. She grabbed her backpack and headed into the house, dropping her keys on the entryway table. "I'm home," she called out, knowing her father would be in his study at this hour. "In here, Liv," came the reply. She found her father, James Bennett, exactly where she expected, surrounded by research papers and multiple computer screens displaying complex data. At 49, James Bennett looked more like a college professor than the co-founder and chief research officer of a multi-billion-dollar agricultural technology company. His casual clothes and perpetually disheveled hair reflected his belief that substance trumped appearance, a philosophy he and his wife had tried to instill in their daughter. "How was school?" he asked, pushing his glasses up onto his forehead and giving her his full attention. Olivia shrugged, dropping into the comfortable chair across from his desk. "Same as usual. Madison Wells made fun of my clothes. Tyler Richardson made farm jokes. I aced my calculus test." Her father's expression softened with concern. "The Wells girl again? Maybe we should talk to the headmistress." "Dad, no," Olivia said firmly. "That would only make it worse. Besides, it's not like she's saying anything that isn't technically true. We do live on a farm." James Bennett chuckled. "A farm that happens to hold 18 patents for agricultural biotechnology and employs over 200 scientists. But yes, technically a farm." His smile faded. "Still, you shouldn't have to deal with that kind of behavior, Liv. Your mother, and I thought Westridge would provide you with the best education and opportunities. We didn't send you there to be ridiculed." "I know," Olivia sighed, "and the education part is great. Mr. Harrington's chemistry class alone is worth putting up with Madison's comments. I just wish—" She trailed off, not entirely sure what she wished for. "That they could see beyond appearances," her father suggested gently. "Maybe, or that I cared less about what they think." She straightened up, changing the subject. "Anyway, how's the drought-resistant wheat project going?" Her father allowed the deflection, launching into an explanation of their latest research breakthrough. Olivia listened intently, asking questions that reflected her deep understanding of the work. Knowledge that would have shocked her classmates who assumed her agricultural background meant simple farming rather than cutting-edge biotechnology. Later that evening, Catherine Bennett arrived home, bringing with her the powerful presence that had built Bennett Agricultural Enterprises from a family farm into an international corporation. At 47, she combined sharp business acumen with genuine passion for sustainable agriculture, a combination that had earned her profiles in Forbes and recognition as one of the most influential women in the agricultural industry. There, are my two favorite scientists," she said warmly, finding her husband and daughter still deep in conversation about crop yields and genetic modifications. She kissed them both before dropping gracefully into a chair. "What did I miss at home while I was dealing with corporate politics?" "Mum, it's not a big deal, but—" Olivia began. "Some of the students at Westridge are giving Olivia a hard time about her clothes and our farm," James interrupted, earning a glare from his daughter. Catherine's expression hardened slightly. "Which students specifically?" "Mom, please, I can handle it," Olivia insisted. "They're just ignorant. They think being a farmer means being uneducated and poor." "Well, that particular misconception seems to be widespread," Catherine replied, her tone measured but with an edge of frustration. "I spent 3 hours today explaining to investors why our sustainable farming methods are more profitable long-term than conventional approaches. Some people simply can't see beyond their preconceptions." She studied her daughter for a moment. "Are you sure you don't want me to speak to someone at the school? Not necessarily about specific students, but about fostering a more inclusive environment." Olivia shook her head firmly. "I'm sure. I only have 1 more year at Westridge after this one. I can manage." She hesitated before adding, "Though Madison did make a point of mentioning the spring formal that's coming up." "Are you planning to attend?" her father asked. "I wasn't, but now I feel like not going would look like I'm intimidated." Olivia ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. "But if I do go, they'll just find new ways to point out that I don't belong." Catherine exchanged a glance with her husband before turning back to her daughter. "You know, I was planning to tell you this weekend, but the timing seems appropriate now. The company jet will be back from its maintenance check next week. If you decide to attend this formal, we could certainly arrange for Thomas to fly you there." "Mom!" Olivia's eyes widened. "That would be extremely excessive, not to mention environmentally irresponsible for such a short trip." "Not if the jet is already making the trip," Catherine pointed out with a small smile. "I've been invited to speak at the National Agricultural Technology Conference in Boston that same weekend. The airstrip at Westridge is less than 20 minutes out of our way." Olivia stared at her mother, torn between her environmental principles and the admittedly appealing thought of arriving at the formal in spectacular fashion. "You don't have to decide now," her father added gently. "And whatever you choose, we support you. Just remember that you never need to be ashamed of who you are or where you come from." The conversation shifted to other topics, but the seed had been planted in Olivia's mind. That night, as she prepared for bed, she stood before her closet, looking at the clothes hanging there. Most were practical, comfortable, many indeed made by her own hands using sustainable materials. There was nothing wrong with them. They reflected her values and her family's commitment to environmental responsibility. But there, in the far corner, hung items rarely worn. A few designer pieces her mother had purchased for business functions. Olivia occasionally attended, clothes that could easily compete with Madison's wardrobe, but that Olivia had chosen not to wear to school, not wanting to seem like she was trying too hard to fit in. She fingered the sleeve of a silk blouse, remembering her mother's words from years ago, "Dress for yourself, not for others." But also remember that, fair or not, appearance is often the first language we speak to the world. The next morning, Olivia made a decision. She selected one of the designer blouses, pairing it with well-fitted jeans that, while not ostentatious, clearly spoke of quality and style. She applied minimal makeup, pulled her hair into a sleek ponytail, and added a simple pair of pearl earrings that had been a gift from her grandmother. The transformation wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. As she entered Westridge's main hallway, she was aware of the subtle shift in other students' reactions. Second glances, raised eyebrows, whispered comments. She made her way to her locker with the same quiet confidence she always carried. But Today, it was matched with an appearance that spoke the language of Westridge Academy. "Well, look who discovered shopping," came Madison's voice from behind her. "Finally realized that homespun went out with the little house on the prairie?" Olivia turned, meeting Madison's gaze directly. "Actually, this blouse is Burberry. I'm sure you recognize it since you wore the same one in blue last month." It was a calculated response, revealing knowledge she typically kept to herself. Madison blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "I didn't realize farm income stretched to Burberry," she managed, recovering quickly. "There's a lot you don't realize about me or my family," Olivia replied calmly. "But that's okay. We all have our blind spots." With that, she closed her locker and walked away, leaving Madison staring after her with an expression caught between surprise and suspicion. Throughout the day, Olivia noticed a subtle shift in how some students interacted with her. The designer blouse had spoken a language they understood, forcing them to reconsider their assumptions. It was a small victory, but Olivia found herself uncomfortable with the implications that her worth somehow increased with the label on her clothing. By lunch period, she had made her decision. She would attend the spring formal, and yes, she would arrive in the company jet, not to impress her classmates, not to seek their approval, but to finally shatter the false perceptions they held about her and her family, perceptions that reflected broader misconceptions about rural America and agricultural communities. As she entered the dining hall, she spotted an open seat at a table of neutral territory, students who weren't part of Madison's inner circle, but weren't social outcasts either. Among them was Emma Chen, a quiet girl from advanced placement. Chemistry, who had always been civil if not particularly friendly. "Mind if I join you?" Olivia asked. Emma looked surprised but nodded. "Of course." As Olivia sat down, she noticed Madison watching from across the room, clearly trying to interpret. This new development let her wonder, Olivia thought. The time for hiding in plain sight was coming to an end. "I heard you corrected Tyler's answer in chemistry yesterday," Emma commented, breaking the slightly awkward silence. "About nitrogen fixation in non-legume crops." "Oh," Olivia smiled, surprised by the overture. "Yes, my family's company has been researching that for years." "Your family has an agricultural company?" asked Jason, another student at the table. Olivia hesitated only briefly before answering. "Yes, Bennett Agricultural Enterprises. We specialize in sustainable farming technology and drought-resistant crops." The name registered with Emma, whose eyes widened slightly. "Wait, Bennett Agricultural? My father mentioned them. Your company just developed that new irrigation system that uses 60% less water, right?" Olivia nodded, watching as the other students at the table reassessed her in real time. It was fascinating, if somewhat disheartening, to observe how quickly their perception shifted once they connected her to a successful business, rather than just farming. "So, you actually live on a research farm?" Emma continued, genuine interest in her voice. "That must be fascinating." "It is," Olivia agreed, warming to the subject. "We're currently working on crops that can thrive in increasingly arid conditions due to climate change. The goal is to help farmers in vulnerable regions maintain food security." The conversation continued, other students occasionally asking questions about her family's work. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was recognition of her knowledge, her background, her value beyond the simplified caricature they had accepted. From across the cafeteria, Madison watched the interaction with narrowed eyes, clearly trying to make sense of the sudden interest in someone she had dismissed as irrelevant. Olivia met her gaze briefly, neither challenging nor conciliatory, before returning to her conversation. After school, instead of heading straight to her truck, Olivia made her way to the administrative building. She had decided to purchase her ticket for the spring formal and needed to address one logistical detail. The school secretary looked up as she entered the office. "Hello, Olivia. What can I help you with today?" "I'd like to purchase a ticket for the spring formal," Olivia replied, "and I also need some information about the school's airstrip. My transportation that evening will be arriving by air." The secretary's eyebrows rose dramatically. "The airstrip? That's typically only used by the board members or for special guests of the school." "I understand," Olivia said calmly, "but my mother will be attending a conference in Boston that weekend and has offered to have our pilot drop me off on the way. Would that be permitted, or should I make alternative arrangements?" Well, I'll need to check with Headmistress Sinclair," the secretary stammered, clearly trying to reconcile this request with her perception of the Bennett family. "Your family has a private aircraft?" "Yes," Olivia confirmed simply, offering no further explanation. "Would you mind checking? When you have a moment, I'd like to confirm the arrangements with our pilot." "Of course, I'll speak to the headmistress immediately," the secretary replied, reaching for her phone. "Please take a seat." Olivia sat in one of the visitor chairs, mentally preparing for the conversation to come. She didn't have to wait long. "Miss Bennett," called the secretary after a brief phone conversation, "Headmistress Sinclair would like to speak with you in her office, right away, if you don't mind." Olivia nodded, gathering her backpack and walking through the inner door that led to the headmistress's office. Victoria Sinclair sat behind her imposing desk, her expression a careful mask of polite interest. "Miss Bennett," she began as Olivia took a seat. "Mrs. Peterson tells me you're inquiring about using our private airstrip for the spring formal. I must say, this is an unusual request from a student." "I understand, Headmistress," Olivia replied evenly. "But my mother will be traveling to Boston for a conference that weekend, and she's offered to have our company jet drop me off on the way. I wanted to make sure this wouldn't violate any school policies." The headmistress studied Olivia with new interest, her gaze sharpening. "Your family company has a private jet?" "Yes, ma'am. Bennett Agricultural Enterprises maintains a corporate aircraft for business travel. My parents are the founders and co-CEOs. Victoria Sinclair's expression shifted almost imperceptibly as she processed this information. "I see. And this is the agricultural business your family runs?" "Yes, ma'am. We're one of the largest agricultural technology companies in the Northeast, specializing in sustainable farming solutions and biotechnology." The headmistress tapped her fingers thoughtfully on her desk blotter. "I must admit, Miss Bennett, your file doesn't contain much detail about your family's enterprise. When you mentioned farm work during your interview, I had envisioned something more traditional." "Many people have that misconception," Olivia replied, keeping her tone respectful but firm. "Traditional farming has evolved significantly with technology. Our research division employs over 200 scientists, and our sustainable farming methods have been implemented in 27 countries." Victoria Sinclair leaned back slightly, reassessing the student before her. "How interesting. I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting your parents at any of our school functions." "They travel frequently for work," Olivia explained, "but they'll be attending the parents' reception before the spring formal. My mother mentioned she's looking forward to discussing Westridge's science curriculum with you." "I'll look forward to that conversation," the headmistress replied, her tone warming considerably. "Regarding your request, yes, of course you may use the airstrip. I'll make arrangements with our facilities department. Please have your pilot contact our operations manager to coordinate." "Thank you, Headmistress Sinclair," Olivia said, rising to leave. "Oh, and Miss Bennett," the headmistress called as Olivia reached the door, "do remind your parents that Westridge is always grateful for the support of our students' families, particularly those with an interest in advancing educational opportunities." The implication was clear, and Olivia had to suppress a smile at the rapid transformation. "I'll be sure to mention that, ma'am." As she left the administrative building, Olivia pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Mom, I've made my decision about the spring formal, and I think it's time Westridge Academy learned a little more about the Bennett family." 2 weeks passed, and April brought warm sunshine to Westridge Academy's campus. The grounds were alive with activity as preparations for the spring formal transformed the already picturesque setting into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers were being hung in the grand ballroom, while gardeners arranged elaborate floral displays throughout the grounds. The annual event was more than just a dance. It was a showcase of the school's prestige and a networking opportunity for parents, many of whom flew in from around the country to attend the associated fundraising gala. In the junior girls' dormitory, excited chatter filled every room as students discussed dresses, dates, and after-parties at various mansions and country clubs. Madison Wells held court in the common room, surrounded by her usual entourage as she detailed her plans for the weekend. "Daddy's sending the car for us at 7, she announced, scrolling through her phone to show off professionally shot photos of her custom-designed gown. "We'll have dinner at Le Chateau before the formal, then everyone's coming back to our lake house after. The staff will have everything ready, and my parents are staying in the city, so we'll have the place to ourselves." "Is Tyler coming to say dinner too?" asked one of her friends, glancing at the others with a knowing look. Madison rolled her eyes. "Of course, though God knows why I put up with him. His father's company is merging with some agricultural technology firm, and all he can talk about lately is sustainability and crop yields. So boring." "Speaking of agricultural," another girl chimed in with a smirk, "is Farm Girl coming to the formal? I haven't heard anything about her buying a ticket." "Olivia?" Madison laughed. "Can you imagine? What would she even wear? One of her homemade potato sacks? Though I suppose she could arrive in her little pickup truck filled with hay bales for the authentic farm experience." The group dissolved into laughter, none of them noticing Emma Chen, standing at the edge of the common room, listening with a slight frown before turning away. Emma found Olivia in the library, surrounded by chemistry textbooks and scientific journals. Unlike the other students preparing for the weekend's festivities, Olivia appeared focused entirely on her studies. "Hey," Emma said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I just came from the dorm. Madison's holding her usual court, talking about the formal." Olivia glanced up, offering a small smile. "Let me guess. She's wondering if I'll show up in overalls and work boots?" "Something like that," Emma admitted. "Are you going to the formal, I mean?" "Actually, yes," Olivia replied, closing her book. "I decided it might be educational for everyone involved." Emma looked intrigued. "What are you planning to wear? Not that it matters, but it matters to some people," Olivia acknowledged, with a wry smile. "And I'll be wearing something appropriate, don't worry." "I wasn't worried," Emma clarified quickly. "I just thought, well, if you wanted to go shopping this weekend, I could go with you. Not that you need help, but it might be fun." Olivia studied the other girl, slightly surprised by the overture. Since their lunch conversation, Emma had been friendly, but not exactly a close friend. "Thanks, Emma. That's really nice of you. But my mom and I already have plans." She hesitated before adding, "Would you like to sit together at the formal? I'm not going with a date." Emma's face lit up. "I'd like that. I'm not going with anyone either." As they returned to their studies, neither girl noticed Madison watching them from the library entrance, her expression calculating. The following day, an unexpected announcement came over the school's PA system during morning classes. "Attention all students and faculty. Please be advised that the school's private airstrip will be in use Friday evening for the spring formal. Security protocols will be in effect. Thank you." Whispers immediately broke out across classrooms. The private airstrip was rarely used except for board members' visits or special guests of the school. Its mention in connection with the spring formal sparked immediate speculation. Maybe they hired a celebrity performer, someone suggested in Olivia's English class. Or one of the trustees is flying in from Europe, offered another. Olivia kept her eyes on her book, the hint of a smile playing at her lips. By lunchtime, the rumors had expanded dramatically. Various celebrities, politicians, and royalty were now supposedly attending the formal. Madison, irritated that something might overshadow her carefully planned evening, sought to reclaim attention. "My father says it's probably just the board chairman," she announced loudly in the dining hall. "He flies in for all the major fundraisers. Nothing exciting." "Actually," said a voice from behind her, "I heard it's multiple aircraft arriving." Headmistress Sinclair stood there, a rare appearance in the student dining hall. Her gaze swept the room before landing on Olivia, who was quietly eating with Emma and a few other students. "Miss Bennett, may I have a word after you've finished your lunch?" All eyes turned to Olivia as the headmistress walked away. Madison's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion. "What did you do? Get caught stealing from the chemistry lab to make fertilizer?" Her attempt at humor fell flat as students watched Olivia calmly finish her meal before gathering her things and following the headmistress out. In Victoria Sinclair's office, the atmosphere was markedly different from Olivia's previous visits. The headmistress gestured for her to take a seat, her manner almost deferential. "Miss Bennett, I've received the flight plan from your family's pilot. Everything is arranged for Friday evening." She paused, clearly fishing for more information. "I understand your mother will be accompanying you." "Yes, ma'am," Olivia confirmed, "and my father as well. They're looking forward to attending the parents' reception before the formal." The headmistress nodded, attempting to appear unsurprised, though her curiosity was evident. "Excellent. I've taken the liberty of reserving them places at the head table for the reception. The board chairman will be delighted to meet them." "That's very kind of you," Olivia replied politely. "My parents will be pleased, though they generally prefer to avoid too much attention." Victoria Sinclair couldn't quite hide her disappointment at this indication that the Bennetts might not be interested in the social positioning she was offering. "Of course, though I should mention that many of our most generous supporters appreciate the opportunity to discuss potential naming opportunities during these events." Olivia maintained her composure, though inwardly she marveled at the headmistress's transparent attempt to secure a donation. "I'll be sure to let them know of your interest in discussing financial support. My mother mentioned she's particularly interested in learning more about Westridge's approach to fostering respect and inclusivity among students." The pointed comment wasn't lost on the headmistress, whose smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Westridge has always prided itself on creating an environment where every student can thrive. "I'm sure my mother will be interested to hear that perspective," Olivia replied evenly. "Was there anything else you needed to discuss, Headmistress Sinclair?" "No, that will be all, Miss Bennett. Thank you for your time." As Olivia left the administrative building, she found Madison and several of her friends waiting near the entrance, their casual poses clearly staged to appear coincidental. "What was that about?" Madison asked, attempting to sound merely curious rather than intensely interested. "Are you in trouble again?" "Again?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I'd been in trouble the first time, Madison." "Headmistress, Sinclair just wanted to confirm some details about the formal." "What details could possibly involve you?" Madison pressed, her friendly facade slipping slightly. Olivia considered the girl before her, recognizing the insecurity beneath the polished exterior. Perhaps, in another context, they might have found common ground, but Madison had made her choice about their relationship long ago. "I suppose you'll find out on Friday," Olivia replied simply before walking away, leaving Madison staring after her with growing frustration. Word of Olivia's meeting with the headmistress spread quickly through Westridge's rumour mill. with speculation growing increasingly wild. By Thursday, theories ranged from Olivia being expelled to her secretly being the daughter of a foreign diplomat. Madison attempted to dismiss the rumors, but even her closest friends seemed more interested in solving the mystery than listening to her complaints about her hairstylist's scheduling conflict. In the dormitories Thursday night, preparations for the formal reached a fever pitch. Girls flitted between rooms, borrowing jewelry and comparing shoes, while boys in the neighboring building engaged in their own less frantic but equally status-conscious preparations. Emma knocked on Olivia's door, finding her calmly reading by the window rather than participating in the general frenzy. "Aren't you getting your dress ready? Steaming it or something?" Emma asked, genuinely curious at Olivia's apparent lack of concern. Olivia looked up with a smile. "It's being delivered tomorrow. One less thing to worry about." "Delivered?" Emma looked impressed. "From where?" "My mother's personal stylist arranged it," Olivia said, the simple statement revealing yet another unexpected aspect of her life. "She works with Mom for all her business functions and international presentations." Emma sat on the edge of Olivia's bed, shaking her head slightly. "You know, none of this makes sense. If your family has all these resources, why do you—" She trailed off, looking embarrassed. "Why do I dress so simply?" Olivia finished for her. "Why drive an old truck? Why not flaunt designer labels like everyone else here?" She set her book aside, considering her answer. "My parents built their company on principles of sustainability and environmental responsibility. They taught me that personal choices should reflect those values. Fast fashion and conspicuous consumption aren't compatible with that philosophy." "But a private jet is?" Emma asked, then immediately looked horrified at her own bluntness. Olivia laughed. "Fair point. The jet is a business tool that unfortunately doesn't have a more eco-friendly alternative yet, though my parents have invested in companies developing electric aircraft technology. They carbon offset every flight and are constantly working to minimize their environmental footprint." She shrugged. "No one's perfect, but we try to be conscious of our choices." Emma nodded slowly, processing this perspective that was so different from the wealth-flaunting culture that dominated Westridge. "So, tomorrow, at the formal." "Tomorrow," Olivia said with a small smile, "is about challenging assumptions and maybe shifting some perspectives. Not just about me, but about what success and value really look like." As the sunset painted Westridge's campus in golden light Friday evening, the atmosphere hummed with anticipation. The formal wasn't scheduled to begin until 8 o'clock, but students were already gathering in small groups, taking photos against the picturesque backdrop of the school's historic architecture. In the grand ballroom, final preparations were underway. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements. A string quartet warmed up in the corner, while catering staff in crisp uniforms arranged trays of hors d'oeuvres. In an adjacent room, the parents' reception was beginning, with Westridge's wealthiest and most influential families mingling over champagne as they prepared to open their checkbooks for the annual fundraising appeal. Headmistress Sinclair moved through the reception room with practiced grace, personally greeting each major donor while keeping one eye on the entrance, watching for the Bennett family's arrival. Despite her best efforts, she had been unable to find much information about them beyond what was publicly available about their company. Bennett Agricultural Enterprises was indeed successful, but maintained a low profile compared to other companies of similar size. They weren't regular fixtures on the charity gala circuit, and their philanthropic giving, while substantial, tended toward practical initiatives rather than high-profile naming opportunities. This made them something of an enigma in Westridge's world of conspicuous wealth and social positioning. The first indication that something unusual was happening came at precisely 7:30, when the distant sound of an approaching aircraft drew students and parents alike to the windows. Private jets weren't uncommon sights at Westridge events, but something about this particular arrival had captured everyone's attention. The sleek aircraft that came into view was not the small business jet most had expected, but a state-of-the-art Gulfstream G700, its gleaming white exterior emblazoned with the Bennett Agricultural Enterprises logo. As it touched down gracefully on the school's private airstrip, gasps and whispers spread through the gathering crowds. Madison Wells, resplendent in her custom designer gown and professional makeup, stood frozen at one of the ballroom windows, her expression shifting from disbelief to growing horror as she watched the scene unfolding. "That can't be," she began, but fell silent as the aircraft's door opened and a staircase descended. The first to emerge was a distinguished-looking man in his late 40s, wearing an impeccably tailored tuxedo. James Bennett surveyed the scene briefly before turning to assist his wife, who appeared next in a stunning emerald evening gown that managed to be simultaneously elegant and understated. Catherine Bennett carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention in international boardrooms, her simple yet exquisite jewelry catching the early evening light. But it was the third figure emerging from the aircraft that truly captured everyone's attention. Olivia Bennett descended the stairs in a gown that perfectly balanced sophistication with youthful elegance. The dress, in a deep midnight blue, featured sustainable silk and had been specifically designed to showcase ethical luxury fashion. Her hair was arranged in an artfully simple updo, adorned with a single family heirloom, a vintage sapphire hairpin that had belonged to her grandmother. Following the Bennett family came a small team of people whom the watching students didn't recognize, but the parents certainly did. The company's chief technology officer, their head of sustainable development, and several other key executives. This wasn't merely a family arriving for a school dance. It was essentially a corporate delegation. Waiting beside the airstrip was not the usual school transport, but a fleet of electric luxury vehicles, their silent motors and sleek designs, representing the cutting edge of sustainable transportation. The Bennetts and their team entered the vehicles, which then proceeded toward the main campus, passing directly in front of the ballroom windows where students and parents alike watched in astonishment. In the parents' reception, Headmistress Sinclair's phone buzzed with a message from security. She quickly excused herself from a conversation with a hedge fund manager, hurrying toward the entrance to greet the unexpected delegation. As she reached the door, she nearly collided with Madison's father, Charles Wells, who had also received notification of the Bennetts' arrival. "Victoria," he said in a low voice, "why wasn't I informed that James and Catherine Bennett would be attending tonight? Their company is precisely the partnership we've been pursuing for the agricultural division." Before the headmistress could formulate a response, the doors opened and the Bennett family entered. The room, typically filled with the confident chatter of America's elite, fell momentarily silent as guests assessed the newcomers. Recognition dawned on many faces, not the social recognition of fellow gala attendees, but the professional recognition of major players in the business world. Victoria Sinclair recovered quickly, gliding forward with her most welcoming smile. "Dr. and Mrs. Bennett, what an honor to welcome you to Westridge Academy. We're so delighted you could join us for this special evening." Catherine Bennett accepted, the greeting with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Headmistress Sinclair, thank you for having us. Olivia has told us so much about Westridge." The slight emphasis on "so much" wasn't lost on the headmistress, who maintained her professional facade despite a flutter of unease. "All good things, I hope," she replied with a light laugh. "Informative, certainly," James Bennett commented. his tone pleasant but measured. "We've been eager to experience Westridge firsthand after hearing about the school's unique culture." Before Victoria could respond, Charles Wells materialized at her side, hand extended. "James, Catherine, what an unexpected pleasure. Charles Wells, we met briefly at the Sustainable Agriculture Summit in Denver last year." "Of course," Catherine replied smoothly, though her expression suggested no particular recollection. "Your company has shown recent interest in agricultural technology, I believe." "Very much so," Charles confirmed eagerly. "In fact, I've been hoping to arrange a meeting with your team about potential collaborations. Had I known you were connected to Westridge, I would have reached out through Victoria here." "Our daughter's education is separate from our business interests, Mr. Wells," James replied pleasantly but firmly, "though we're always open to discussing innovations that advance sustainable agriculture." As the conversation continued, Olivia stood slightly apart, watching the social dynamics unfold with quiet interest. She had seen her parents navigate these waters countless times, maintaining their principles while skillfully managing those who saw them primarily as potential business advantages. The student formal wouldn't begin for another 30 minutes, giving parents and major donors this opportunity to network and mingle. The Bennetts were quickly surrounded by interested parties, many of whom suddenly discovered urgent interest in agricultural technology and sustainable farming practices. Across the room, Madison had entered with her parents, her expression fluctuating between shock and calculation as she observed Olivia and her family. The social hierarchy she had taken for granted was being dramatically reconfigured before her eyes, and she was struggling to adjust her understanding of where she stood in this new reality. Taking advantage of a momentary lull in the conversation surrounding her parents, Olivia excused herself and made her way toward the ballroom where students were beginning to gather. As she entered, the reaction was immediate. Conversations paused mid-sentence, heads turned, and the usual social groupings momentarily dissolved as everyone assessed this unexpected development. Olivia spotted Emma near the refreshment table and walked toward her, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her progress across the room. "You look amazing," Emma said warmly, her simple burgundy dress elegant, if not as distinctive, as Olivia's, "and your entrance was... well, I don't think anyone will forget it." Olivia smiled, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a nearby server. "It wasn't meant to be dramatic, believe it or not. My parents really did have business in Boston this weekend." "Right," Emma laughed, "and they just happened to bring half their executive team along for your school dance." "Quarter, actually," Olivia corrected with a grin, "and they're here for a technology conference that starts tomorrow. My parents thought it would be a good opportunity to see Westridge for themselves." Before Emma could respond, Madison approached, flanked by her usual group, though their typical confidence seemed somewhat diminished. Madison herself had clearly made an effort to recover her composure, her smile fixed and determined. "Olivia," she said, her voice carrying slightly more than necessary, ensuring nearby students could hear, "what a surprise. I had no idea your family was in the position to make such an entrance." "There's a lot you didn't know about me, Madison," Olivia replied calmly, "though not for lack of me telling you." Madison faltered slightly but pressed on. "Well, if we'd known your family was so prominent, we would have made more of an effort to include you in our activities." The naked social calculation in this statement hung in the air between them, its insincerity apparent to everyone listening. Olivia regarded Madison thoughtfully, recognizing the opportunity to either humiliate her in return or offer a path towards something better. "I appreciate that, Madison," she said finally, "though I hope we can all agree that people deserve respect, regardless of their family's resources or status." Madison blinked, clearly unprepared for this response. Before she could formulate a reply, the doors to the reception room opened, and the parents began filing in to observe the beginning of the formal. Headmistress Sinclair entered alongside Catherine and James Bennett, the three of them pausing at the entrance as conversations throughout the ballroom quieted. "Students, parents, esteemed guests," the headmistress began, her voice carrying across the room. "Welcome to Westridge Academy's annual spring formal. Tonight we celebrate not only our wonderful students, but also the continued support of our parent community." She turned slightly toward the Bennetts, clearly intending to introduce them, but Catherine stepped forward first, politely taking control of the moment. "James and I are delighted to be here tonight," she said, her voice warm but carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to addressing large audiences. "We've heard so much about Westridge from our daughter Olivia, and we've been eager to experience this community firsthand." Her gaze swept the room, briefly settling on Madison and her friends before finding Olivia. "We believe deeply in the power of education to transform lives and build a better future. That's why our company has established a new scholarship program to support students from agricultural communities who demonstrate exceptional promise in sustainable technologies and environmental science." This unexpected announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the room. The headmistress looked momentarily stunned, but quickly recovered, stepping forward with an enthusiastic smile. "What a wonderful surprise, Mrs. Bennett. Westridge would be honored to partner with Bennett Agricultural Enterprises on such a worthy initiative." Catherine's smile remained pleasant but non-committal. "We're still finalizing the details, headmistress. We'll be reviewing several schools' science programs and campus cultures to determine the best fit for our scholarship recipients." The implication was clear. Westridge was being evaluated, not chosen. The headmistress's smile faltered slightly, as she realized the Bennetts had effectively reversed the usual dynamic, where schools like Westridge selected students and families felt privileged to be included. "Of course," Victoria Sinclair replied smoothly. "We welcome your consideration and are confident our program will impress." As the formal proceedings continued, Olivia found herself at the center of attention in a way she had never experienced. At Westridge, students who had previously ignored or mocked her now sought introductions, their manner ranging from genuinely apologetic to transparently opportunistic. Through it all, Olivia maintained the same quiet dignity she had always carried, neither gloating over the reversal nor encouraging the sudden social climbing directed her way. When Madison approached again, this time alone and with a more subdued demeanor, Olivia met her with neither hostility nor excessive warmth. "Your parents are going to fund a scholarship program?" Madison asked, the calculation in her voice less obvious but still present. "They've been planning it for some time," Olivia confirmed. "They believe diversity of thought and experience drives innovation. That's why they wanted me to attend a school like Westridge, to gain exposure to different perspectives." Madison absorbed this, visibly reassessing her understanding of the situation. "I may have misjudged you," she admitted finally, the closest thing to an apology her pride would allow. "You judged me based on appearances and assumptions," Olivia corrected gently. "We all do that sometimes. The question is whether we're willing to look deeper when those assumptions are challenged." Across the room, Catherine Bennett was engaged in conversation with Headmistress Sinclair, her posture relaxed, but her gaze intent. Those standing nearby could hear fragments of their discussion, phrases like inclusive environment and valuing diversity beyond socioeconomic status, suggesting the direction of their talk. "I understand your scholarship program will be quite substantial," the headmistress was saying, clearly fishing for details. "Westridge would be delighted to highlight it in our next donor newsletter." We prefer to keep the focus on the students, rather than our philanthropy, Catherine replied. But speaking of students, I've been curious about Westridge's approach to social integration. Olivia has mentioned some challenges in that area. The headmistress's pleasant expression flickered briefly. All schools have their social dynamics, Mrs. Bennett. I assure you, we take any issues of exclusion very seriously. I'm glad to hear that, Catherine said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Because we'll be looking very closely at campus culture as we evaluate partner schools for our program. The ability to recognize value beyond superficial markers is essential in both education and business. Don't you agree? Before the headmistress could respond, James Bennett joined them, bringing along Charles Wells and several other parents. Catherine, Charles was just sharing some fascinating insights about Westridge's social hierarchy. Apparently, there's quite a specific pecking order among the students. Is that so? Catherine turned her attention to Madison's father, who suddenly looked less comfortable with the direction of the conversation. Well, all schools have their social groups, he offered, echoing the headmistress's earlier statement. It's natural for students to form connections based on common interests and backgrounds. Of course, James agreed pleasantly, though I've always found that the most innovative teams are those that bring together diverse perspectives and experiences. Surrounding yourself only with people who share your background tends to limit growth and creativity. The parents listening shifted slightly, some nodding in agreement, while others looked less comfortable with this implicit challenge to Westridge's exclusivity. As the evening continued, it became increasingly clear that the Bennett's presence had catalyzed something beyond a simple reversal of social standing for Olivia. They had introduced a different value system into Westridge's carefully maintained culture, one that prioritized substance over appearance, contribution over consumption, and inclusion over exclusivity. By the time the formal was in full swing, with music playing and students dancing, Olivia found a moment of quiet to step outside onto one of the ballroom's balconies. The spring night was cool but pleasant, stars visible above the campus grounds stretching into the distance. Quite a transformation from the girl they mocked for her homemade clothes, came her mother's voice as Catherine joined her at the balcony. Railing. Olivia smiled, leaning slightly against her mother's shoulder. I'm still the same person, Mom. They're just seeing me differently now. And that's the problem, isn't it? Catherine observed, gazing out at the carefully manicured grounds. Value shouldn't depend on perception. Worth shouldn't be determined by status or wealth. Or lack thereof, Olivia added quietly. James Bennett joined them, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. You handled yourself with remarkable grace tonight, Liv, both when they dismissed you and when they suddenly wanted to claim you as their own. I had good teachers, she replied, looking between her parents with genuine appreciation. From inside came the sounds of laughter and music, the formal continuing in full swing, though with subtle shifts in the social dynamics that had long governed Westridge Academy. Madison could be seen moving between groups, her usual confidence somewhat diminished, but a thoughtfulness in her expression that hadn't been there before. Ready to go back in? James asked his daughter. Olivia nodded, straightening her shoulders. Yes, but not to prove anything to them, just to enjoy the evening with Emma and maybe a few others who might be worth knowing better. As they turned to re-enter the ballroom, Catherine paused, her expression growing more serious. Headmistress Sinclair has been quite persistent about discussing potential donations. I think it's time we had a more direct conversation about the school's culture and values before making any commitments. Agreed, James said. And I believe that conversation should include some honest feedback about how certain students have been treated. Olivia considered this, then shook her head slightly. Maybe instead of focusing on what's been wrong, we could talk about what could be better. How Westridge could become a place that truly values all kinds of excellence, not just the most visible or traditional forms. Catherine smiled at her daughter with evident pride. A constructive approach. You might make a business leader yet, Olivia. Maybe, Olivia conceded with a small smile. But first, I think I'd like to focus on being a catalyst for change right here. Together, the Bennett family returned to the formal, their presence continuing to subtly shift the atmosphere of an institution that had remained unchanged for generations. The private jet that had so dramatically announced their arrival now stood as a powerful symbol, not merely of wealth or status, but of the unexpected forms excellence could take when one looked beyond appearances to the substance beneath. The Monday after the spring formal, Westridge Academy buzzed with a new energy. The weekend's events had shattered long-held assumptions and reshaped the social landscape in ways no one had anticipated. Students gathered in small clusters throughout the campus. Conversations focused almost exclusively on the Bennett family's dramatic entrance and the revelations that followed. In the junior common room, even Madison's usual holding court had taken on a different tone. Gone was the casual mockery of those deemed less worthy. Instead, she seemed to be repositioning herself as someone who had always seen Olivia's potential. Of course, I knew her family was involved in agriculture, Madison explained to her attentive audience. I just didn't realize the scale of their operation. Bennett Agricultural Enterprises is revolutionizing sustainable farming. My father says they're the future of the industry. The same girls who had laughed at her farm jokes days earlier now nodded earnestly. Did you hear about their scholarship program? One asked. My brother is actually considering applying. He's always been interested in environmental science. The conversation paused as Olivia entered the room, accompanied by Emma. The sudden silence was followed by an equally awkward rush of overly enthusiastic greetings. Olivia, we were just talking about your family's amazing work in sustainable agriculture, Madison called, patting the seat beside her in clear invitation. You should join us. Olivia observed the group with a measured gaze, noting the transformed dynamics with neither satisfaction nor resentment. Thanks, Madison, but Emma and I are heading to the library to work on our chemistry project. Oh, we could all go, Madison suggested brightly. I could use some help with the latest chemistry assignment anyway. Emma raised an eyebrow, exchanging a glance with Olivia. Madison Wells had never before shown the slightest interest in collaborative study. Maybe another time, Olivia replied politely. We've already reserved a study room. As they left, Emma leaned closer to whisper, That was the most surreal interaction I've ever witnessed. 2 weeks ago, she was calling you farm girl, and now she's practically begging for your attention. People are complicated, Olivia observed, quietly. Madison's entire identity is built around social status. When the hierarchy shifted, she had to recalibrate. You're being remarkably understanding towards someone who treated you terribly. Olivia shrugged. Holding grudges takes energy I'd rather direct elsewhere. Besides, what happened this weekend isn't really about Madison or even about me. It's about challenging a system that teaches students to value the wrong things. They passed a bulletin board where a newly posted announcement caught their attention. Headmistress Sinclair had scheduled an all-school assembly for Wednesday morning, with a special focus on community values and mutual respect. Beside it hung another notice announcing the formation of a new environmental innovation club, with Mr. Harrington listed as faculty advisor. Interesting timing, Emma noted dryly. Very, Olivia agreed with a small smile. The shifts in Westridge's atmosphere extended beyond student interactions. Faculty members who had previously overlooked Olivia now engaged with her ideas with newfound interest. In chemistry class, Mr. Harrington seized the opportunity to leverage this change, directing class discussion toward agricultural applications of their current unit. "Miss Bennett," he said, "given your family's work in drought-resistant crops, perhaps you could share some insights on how biochemical modifications are being applied in sustainable agriculture." Before, such a direct invitation might have prompted snickers or eye-rolling from certain students. Today, notebooks opened and pens hovered attentively as Olivia began explaining the innovative approaches her parents' company was developing. "The key challenge isn't just creating crops that require less water," she explained, warming to a subject she knew intimately. "It's developing solutions that are accessible to small-scale farmers globally, not just large agricultural corporations. My parents believe that proprietary technology that only benefits the wealthy isn't true innovation." She noticed Tyler Richardson, Madison's on-again, off-again boyfriend and previously one of her most vocal critics, actually taking notes. The transformation was as fascinating as it was somewhat disheartening. Her knowledge hadn't changed, only others' perception of its value. After class, Mr. Harrington asked her to stay behind briefly. "Olivia, I wanted to ask if you'd consider taking a leadership role in the new Environmental Innovation Club. Your practical experience would be invaluable." "I'm flattered, Mr. Harrington, but can I ask why now? I've been sharing these same ideas all year." The teacher had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Sometimes it takes a catalyst for people to recognize what's been in front of them all along. Your family's visit created that catalyst. I'd be lying if I said the administration's sudden interest in environmental studies wasn't influenced by the possibility of Bennett funding, but that doesn't make the opportunity any less valuable for students." Olivia considered this honest assessment. "I'll think about it. If the club is genuine about exploring sustainable innovation rather than just looking good on college applications, I'd be interested." "That would be entirely up to the students involved," Mr. Harrington replied, "and their leadership." Later, that day, Olivia received a summons to Headmistress Sinclair's office, her third such visit in as many weeks, though under dramatically different circumstances each time. The headmistress's demeanor had undergone a complete transformation since their first encounter. Gone was the dismissive condescension. In its place was an almost deferential cordiality. "Miss Bennett, thank you for coming," Victoria Sinclair began warmly. "I wanted to personally inform you of some exciting new initiatives we're developing at Westridge, partly inspired by your family's remarkable work." "That's very thoughtful of you, Headmistress," Olivia replied, maintaining the same composed politeness she had shown when being subtly disparaged by the same woman weeks earlier. "We're establishing a sustainability committee to review all aspects of campus operations, from our food sourcing to energy usage. Given your background, we thought you might be interested in serving as the junior class representative." Olivia noted the strategic nature of the offer, a visible position that would associate Westridge with the Bennett name while requiring Olivia's time and effort. "That's an interesting proposal. What specific authority would this committee have to implement changes?" The headmistress seemed slightly taken aback by the direct question. "Well, it would be primarily advisory, of course, making recommendations to the board and administration." "I see," Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "And has the board allocated specific funding for implementing these recommendations, or would that require additional approval?" Victoria Sinclair's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Clearly, she had not expected to be questioned on the substantive details of what was primarily a publicity effort. "These are excellent questions that demonstrate your sophisticated understanding of institutional change, Miss Bennett. The specific funding mechanisms would indeed require board approval, but I assure you we're committed to making meaningful progress. In that case, Olivia replied, I'd be happy to participate on the condition that the committee includes representatives from the maintenance and kitchen staff. They're the ones who understand the day-to-day operations best and would be implementing any changes. The headmistress hesitated visibly. Including service staff on a committee alongside trustees and faculty would be unprecedented at Westridge, where strict hierarchies had always been maintained. That's an unorthodox suggestion. Innovation often requires unorthodox approaches, Olivia pointed out mildly. My parents built their company on the principle that good ideas can come from anywhere in an organization. Their most successful water conservation system was actually developed based on a suggestion from a seasonal farm worker. Victoria Sinclair recovered quickly, her political instincts shifting to accommodate this unexpected challenge. What a fascinating approach. I'd love to discuss it further with your parents. Have they mentioned when they might visit campus again? The chairman of our board expressed particular interest in speaking with them about potential collaborations. They're quite focused on their research projects at the moment, Olivia replied, recognizing the attempted deflection. But regarding the Sustainability Committee, shall I tell them you're open to including staff representatives? I know they'll be interested to hear about Westridge's commitment to inclusive decision-making. Checkmate. The headmistress's smile remained fixed, but calculation flickered behind her eyes. Of course, I think that could be arranged. What a progressive suggestion. As Olivia left the administrative building, she found Madison waiting outside, apparently just happening to be passing by. How do you do that? Madison asked, falling into step beside her. Do what? Stand your ground with Sinclair. Everyone knows she practically runs the board, not the other way around. No one questions her. Olivia considered the question seriously. I suppose I don't see authority as something to fear or automatically defer to. Position doesn't make someone right, it just gives them power. The question is how they use that power. Madison absorbed this, her expression uncharacteristically thoughtful. My mother always says never to challenge people who can hurt your social standing or college recommendations. That's one approach, Olivia acknowledged, but then you're giving away your power to decide what's right for yourself. They walked in silence for a moment before Madison spoke again. Is it true what people are saying, that your parents might fund a new science building if Westridge makes curriculum changes? I have no idea what they're considering, Olivia replied honestly. But I know they wouldn't make a donation just to see their name on a building. Any support would be tied to substantive commitments to change. Madison nodded slowly. My father's the same way with his business investments. He says philanthropy without accountability is just vanity. She hesitated before adding, I was thinking about joining the Environmental Innovation Club, not just because it would look good for college, but it actually sounds interesting. Olivia studied the girl who had once mocked her mercilessly, recognizing the tentative olive branch being extended. Mr. Harrington's a great teacher. I'm sure the club will be worthwhile. The following day brought another shift in Westridge's evolving landscape. The school newspaper released a special edition featuring an interview with Mr. Harrington about the new Environmental Innovation Club. The article highlighted the growing importance of sustainable technology in various career fields, with specific mention of Bennett Agricultural Enterprises' pioneering work. More tellingly, the edition included an editorial from the paper's student editor addressing the culture of exclusion at Westridge. Perhaps it's time we examine the values that truly drive our community. Do we measure worth by designer labels and family connections, or by character, intellect, and contribution? Recent events have challenged us to reconsider assumptions that many of us have taken for granted. The question now is whether we have the courage to build a more authentic and inclusive culture at Westridge. The article caused considerable discussion throughout campus, with students dividing along predictable lines. Those who had benefited most from the existing social structure dismissed it as politically correct posturing, while others, particularly those who had experienced the sting of exclusion, expressed cautious hope for genuine change. By Wednesday morning, when the all-school assembly was held, the atmosphere at Westridge seemed balanced on a knife's edge between resistance to change and recognition of its necessity. The grand hall filled with students and faculty, an undercurrent of anticipation running through the gathered crowd. Headmistress Sinclair took the podium, her expression appropriately serious as she surveyed the assembled school community. Good morning, Westridge. Today I want to speak with you about our community values and the standard of mutual respect we expect from every member of this institution. What followed was a carefully crafted speech that acknowledged certain incidents of exclusionary behavior without specifically naming any individuals or groups. The headmistress spoke about Westridge's long tradition of excellence, while emphasizing that true excellence encompassed character and citizenship alongside academic achievement. Moving forward, she concluded, we will be implementing several new initiatives designed to foster a more inclusive community. These will include expanded diversity in our guest speaker series, the formation of a student-faculty community standards committee, and a new merit scholarship specifically for students with innovative approaches to global challenges. The assembly concluded with the announcement that Bennett Agricultural Enterprises had agreed to fund an annual symposium on sustainable innovation at Westridge, bringing together student researchers from various schools to share ideas and develop solutions to environmental challenges. As students filed out, reactions ranged from eye-rolling to genuine enthusiasm. Olivia, walking alongside Emma, overheard snippets of conversation that reflected the mixed response. Typical Sinclair. Turn everything into a fundraising opportunity. One senior remarked cynically, I don't care why they're doing it. The symposium sounds amazing, countered another student. Emma glanced at Olivia. Did you know about the symposium? My parents mentioned they were considering something along those lines, Olivia admitted, but it wasn't finalized when we last spoke. So Westridge passed the initial evaluation? Olivia smiled slightly. Let's say they showed potential for growth. Throughout the following weeks, the changes at Westridge continued to unfold in both obvious and subtle ways. The newly formed Environmental Innovation Club quickly became one of the most popular extracurricular activities on campus, with over 30 students attending the first meeting. Mr. Harrington seemed both surprised and pleased by the turnout, particularly when several of Madison's social circle arrived, led by Madison herself. Welcome, everyone, he began, looking around the crowded classroom. I'm thrilled to see such interest in environmental innovation. Before we discuss specific projects, I'd like to establish that this club will be focused on developing practical solutions, not just theoretical discussions. That means getting your hands dirty occasionally and challenging conventional thinking. His gaze lingered briefly on the group of students more commonly seen discussing fashion than photosynthesis. If anyone joined expecting an easy addition to their college applications, you might want to reconsider. To many people's surprise, Madison was the first to respond. I think I speak for all of us when I say we're here to learn and contribute, Mr. Harrington. Some of us may be new to environmental science, but that doesn't mean we can't bring valuable perspectives. The teacher nodded, seemingly satisfied with this response. Excellent. In that case, let's begin by forming research teams. Each group will identify a sustainability challenge on campus and develop a practical proposal to address it. The meeting progressed. Olivia found herself partnered with Madison and two other students she barely knew. A deliberate mixing orchestrated by Mr. Harrington to break down existing social groupings. Initially awkward, the discussion gradually warmed as they began brainstorming ideas for reducing food waste in the school dining halls. "The problem isn't just what gets thrown away after meals," Olivia explained, drawing on her knowledge of food systems. "It's the entire supply chain. We order too much of certain foods because we don't accurately predict consumption patterns. Could we track what actually gets eaten versus what gets thrown away?" Madison suggested. "My father's company uses analytics to predict consumer behavior for inventory management." Olivia looked at her with newfound respect. "That's actually a great idea. We could develop an app to track consumption and waste, then use that data to optimize purchasing." By the end of the session, their group had outlined a promising project that combined technology with practical implementation. As they gathered and their materials to leave, Madison hesitated before turning to Olivia. "This was actually interesting," she admitted. "I've never really thought about where food comes from or how much gets wasted." "And most people don't," Olivia replied without judgment. "But once you start paying attention, you see the connections everywhere." Madison nodded slowly. "Listen, I know things have been weird between us. I said some things that were, well, they were cruel. I'm not asking to be best friends or anything, but I'd like us to work well together on this project." The apology, while indirect, represented significant growth from a girl who had never before acknowledged wrongdoing. Olivia recognized the effort it must have taken. "I'd like that too. And for what it's worth, I think your analytics idea is brilliant." Madison's expression brightened at the genuine compliment. "Thanks. Maybe I could come by the library tomorrow to research existing food waste tracking systems." "That would be great. Emma and I usually study there after classes." The small exchange, seemingly insignificant amid the larger changes sweeping through Westridge, nevertheless represented something profound. The beginning of authentic connection across the artificial boundaries that had long divided the student body. Similar shifts were occurring throughout the school. The previously rigid lunch table hierarchy began to dissolve as new connections formed through clubs and projects. Faculty members who had once tacitly reinforced social stratification now actively encouraged cross-group collaboration. Even the physical spaces of the campus seemed to be used differently, with students gathering in more diverse groupings in common areas. Not everyone embraced these changes, of course. Some students from privileged backgrounds resented the implicit challenge to their assumed superiority. A few parents contacted the administration with concerns about lowered standards or political agendas, thinly veiled objections to the more inclusive atmosphere. But the momentum had shifted decisively. When the Board of Trustees convened for their monthly meeting in late April, they faced a different landscape than the one that had existed just weeks earlier. Headmistress Sinclair, ever the political survivor, presented the recent changes as strategic innovations positioning Westridge at the forefront of progressive education. "Our partnership with Bennett Agricultural Enterprises represents just the beginning of a new direction," she explained to the assembled board members. "By emphasizing practical innovation alongside academic rigor, we're preparing our students for leadership in a rapidly evolving global economy." Charles Wells, Madison's father and a recent addition to the board, nodded his agreement. "I've seen remarkable engagement from my daughter since joining the Environmental Innovation Club. She's developing analytical skills that will serve her well in any field." The board chairman, initially skeptical about what he viewed as disruptive changes to Westridge's traditional approach, found himself surrounded by colleagues increasingly supportive of the new direction. The potential for significant funding from the Bennetts certainly influenced this enthusiasm, but so did the tangible energy now evident across campus. I suppose we should consider formalizing some of these initiatives in our strategic plan, he conceded, particularly if they're yielding positive results for our students. Victoria Sinclair seized the opening. I've taken the liberty of drafting some proposed additions to our mission statement, emphasizing innovation, inclusivity, and practical application of knowledge. Additionally, I've outlined a restructuring of our merit scholarship program to identify promising students from diverse backgrounds, particularly those with potential contributions to sustainable technologies. The documents circulated among the board members, who reviewed them with varying degrees of enthusiasm, but a growing recognition of their inevitability. By meeting's end, the board had unanimously approved the changes, effectively endorsing the transformation that had begun, with one student's quiet dignity in the face of mockery. Later that week, Olivia received an unexpected email from Catherine Bennett. Darling, your father and I have just finished a productive call with Westridge's board. They've made some encouraging commitments regarding campus sustainability initiatives and scholarship opportunities for students from agricultural communities. While there's still work to be done, we believe they're demonstrating genuine willingness to evolve. Most importantly, we've heard from several sources about the positive changes you're helping to create there. Leadership isn't about titles or authority, but about catalyzing transformation through example and quiet influence. You're demonstrating that beautifully. We're tremendously proud of you, not for revealing your background, which was our choice, not yours, but for how you've handled both the initial prejudice and the subsequent reversal with equal grace. True character shows itself not in victories, but in challenges. Your father sends his love and asks me to tell you that the drought-resistant wheat project was approved for expanded field trials, partly based on the research you helped compile last summer. Your name is included in the team credits, your first official research citation. With all our love, Mom Olivia read the message twice, a warm glow of pride spreading through her at her parents' words. The research citation was exciting, but their recognition of her handling of the situation meant even more. She had navigated a complex social transformation without becoming either bitter about the past or arrogant in victory. As April turned to May, the concrete results of Westridge's evolution became increasingly visible. The Sustainability Committee, which now indeed included representation from maintenance and kitchen staff, implemented its first project, a comprehensive composting system that reduced the school's food waste by nearly 40%. The Environmental Innovation Club presented its findings at a regional competition, with Madison and Olivia's team winning recognition for their food waste tracking application. Most significantly, the administration announced the establishment of the Bennett Scholarship for Agricultural Innovation, which would provide full tuition for 5 students from farming communities each year, beginning with the upcoming fall semester. During a planning meeting for the new scholarship program, Headmistress Sinclair found herself working directly with Olivia to develop selection criteria that would identify students with both academic potential and practical innovation experience. We want to ensure we're not just replicating traditional metrics, Olivia explained. Some of the most innovative thinkers haven't had access to AP classes or standardized test prep, but they've developed remarkable solutions to real-world problems, on their farms or in their communities. Victoria Sinclair, who once would have dismissed such suggestions as lowering standards, now nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps we could include a project-based assessment, asking applicants to identify an agricultural or environmental challenge in their community and propose a solution. Exactly, Olivia agreed, surprised but pleased by the headmistress's genuine engagement, and we should involve current students in the review process to bring diverse perspectives to the evaluation. As they continued working, the headmistress paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Miss Bennett, Olivia, I owe you an apology. When you first arrived at Westridge, I made assumptions based on superficial factors rather than recognizing your true potential. That was a failure on my part, both as an educator and as a person. The admission clearly didn't come easily to a woman accustomed to unquestioned authority. Olivia recognized the genuine effort it represented. Thank you, Headmistress. I appreciate that. She paused before adding, education should be about growth for all of us. Victoria Sinclair nodded slowly. Indeed. And I believe Westridge itself is receiving quite an education this spring. By the time final exams approached, in late May, Westridge Academy had undergone a remarkable transformation. Not complete, not perfect, but genuine. The change wasn't limited to new programs or revised mission statements, though these were important. The real shift had occurred in the everyday interactions among students, in the classroom discussions that now included more diverse voices, in the gradual dismantling of artificial hierarchies that had limited potential and reinforced privilege. One afternoon, as Olivia crossed the campus quad, she noticed Madison sitting alone on a bench, uncharacteristically subdued. Hesitating only briefly, she changed direction and approached her former tormentor, now tentative collaborator. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, sitting beside her. Madison sighed, looking up with reddened eyes. "Not really. My parents are getting divorced. My dad's moving to Chicago for his new position." "I'm sorry to hear that," Olivia said gently. "That must be really difficult." "The worst part is how everyone's treating me differently," Madison admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some people who I thought were friends are suddenly distant, like my family drama might be contagious, or like I'm less valuable now that my parents are splitting their assets." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Madison experiencing the conditional acceptance she had once enforced on others. "That reveals more about them than about you?" Olivia observed quietly. Madison nodded, wiping away a stray tear. "I keep thinking about what you said, about building your identity around social status. That's exactly what I've done, and now I'm realizing how empty it is." She looked directly at Olivia. "How do you stay so centered, even when people were terrible to you?" Olivia considered the question thoughtfully. "I think it comes from knowing who you are apart from what others think of you. My parents always emphasized that our worth comes from our character and contributions, not external validation." "That sounds nice in theory, but how do you actually do it?" "Start by figuring out what matters to you, not what you think should matter, but what genuinely brings you meaning. For me, it's using science to solve environmental challenges. What is it for you?" Madison looked surprised, as if no one had ever asked her this question before. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been so busy trying to maintain my social position that I never really thought about what I actually enjoy." "The environmental project seemed to interest you," Olivia suggested. "You had some great insights about systems and analytics." "I did enjoy that," Madison acknowledged, seeming surprised by the realization. "My father always said I had a good head for business strategy, but I never thought about applying it to something like sustainability." "Maybe that's a starting point," Olivia offered. "Finding something that engages your strengths, but directs them towards something meaningful." As they continued talking, the conversation shifting to more practical matters of final exam preparation and summer plans, both girls recognized that something significant had changed between them. Not friendship exactly, at least not yet, but mutual respect built on authentic understanding rather than social positioning. It was a microcosm of the larger transformation occurring at Westridge, where long-held assumptions were being questioned and new possibilities explored. The journey wasn't complete, the changes not yet fully realized, but a process had begun. that would continue to unfold in the months and years ahead. For Olivia Bennett, watching this transformation from her unique vantage point, there was profound satisfaction in knowing that sometimes the most powerful catalyst for change isn't dramatic confrontation but quiet authenticity, the courage to remain true to one's values even when they run counter to prevailing norms. Her parents' dramatic arrival by private jet had certainly accelerated the process, but the foundation had been laid by her daily choices and unwavering dignity in the face of mockery. As spring gave way to summer at Westridge Academy, the seeds of change continued to take root, promising a harvest of new possibilities for students who would follow. And for Olivia, there was the quiet knowledge that transformation often begins not with grand gestures, but with individual courage, the willingness to stand firm in one's truth, regardless of what others may think or say. 5 years later, Olivia Bennett stood at the podium in Westridge Academy's newly constructed Sustainable Innovation Center. The glass and wood structure, with its living green roof and state-of-the-art solar array, stood as a physical embodiment of the transformation that had swept through the institution since that pivotal spring formal. As the sunshine streamed through the building's carefully designed windows, Olivia surveyed the diverse crowd gathered for the center's dedication ceremony. When I first came to Westridge Academy as a junior, wearing my homemade clothes and driving my mud-splattered pickup truck, I couldn't have imagined standing here today, she began, her voice carrying confidently across the filled auditorium. Not because I lacked ambition, but because Westridge itself couldn't yet imagine the possibilities that lay beyond its traditional definitions of excellence and success. In the front row sat Catherine and James Bennett, their expressions reflecting quiet pride as they watched their daughter, now a poised and accomplished young woman of 22. Beside them sat Emma Chen, who had become Olivia's closest friend and was now her research partner at MIT, where they were both pursuing graduate degrees in environmental engineering. Scattered throughout the audience were faces that told the story of Westridge's evolution. Madison Wells, who had graduated alongside Olivia and gone on to Stanford Business School with a focus on sustainable enterprise. Mr. Harrington, whose Environmental Innovation Club had grown into one of the most successful programs at the school. And dozens of scholarship students from agricultural communities who now thrived at Westridge thanks to the Bennett Scholarship Program. What we celebrate today isn't just a building, impressive as it is, Olivia continued. We're celebrating a fundamental shift in how we define value, merit, and potential. The journey hasn't always been easy or straightforward, but it has been profoundly necessary. Victoria Sinclair, still headmistress though now nearing retirement, nodded slightly from her seat on the stage. The transformation of Westridge under her leadership had become a case study in institutional evolution, though few knew that it had begun with her dismissive treatment of a student she had judged solely by appearance. 5 years ago, I was mocked for my simple clothes and rural background, Olivia acknowledged without bitterness. Today, Westridge has students from 47 different counties and 6 countries, many from agricultural communities that were once considered incompatible with this institution's definition of excellence. The audience included major donors and educational leaders who had gathered to witness what many now considered a model for progressive change in elite educational institutions. The Center for Sustainable Innovation represented not merely an architectural achievement, but a philosophical one, a space where theoretical knowledge and practical application came together, where students from diverse backgrounds collaborated on solutions to pressing environmental challenges. What transformed Westridge wasn't just the Bennett family's resources, Olivia emphasized, knowing that some still attributed the changes solely to her family's financial influence. It was a collective willingness to question assumptions, to recognize value in unexpected places, and to create space for different forms of knowledge and experience to contribute to our shared goals. From her vantage point on the stage, Olivia could see the subtle nodding of heads among those who had been part of the journey from the beginning. Those who understood that while the Bennett jet landing on Westridge's airstrip had created a dramatic catalyst, the real transformation had been cultural and philosophical rather than merely financial. "I'd like to share a story that few people have heard," Olivia continued, her voice taking on a more personal tone. 2 weeks after, that famous spring formal Madison Wells, who had once been my most vocal critic, approached me in the library. Her family was going through difficulties, and she was experiencing for the first time what it felt like to be judged on criteria beyond her control. In the audience, Madison smiled slightly, no longer embarrassed by this chapter of her story. The girl who had once derived her entire identity from social status had evolved into a young woman with genuine purpose and vision. Instead of taking satisfaction in this reversal, I saw an opportunity for something more meaningful, authentic connection across the artificial boundaries that had divided us, Olivia explained. That conversation became the foundation for a collaborative project that eventually won the National Environmental Innovation Competition and helped shape the curriculum we're implementing in this very building. The audience applauded as Olivia gestured toward a display case in the lobby, visible through the auditorium's glass wall, where the national award stood alongside photos of the original student team. That experience taught me something profound about the nature of transformation, Olivia reflected. Real change doesn't come from replacing one hierarchy with another, or simply elevating previously marginalized voices while silencing others. It comes from creating systems where diverse perspectives genuinely collaborate, where we recognize that innovation thrives at the intersection of different knowledge traditions and lived experiences. As Olivia spoke, her gaze moved to the back of the room, where the maintenance and kitchen staff stood, now regular participants in Westridge's decision-making processes through the Sustainability Committee that had been formed 5 years earlier. Their insights had proven invaluable in developing practical solutions to environmental challenges, confirming Olivia's belief that wisdom could come from anywhere in an organization. The scholarship program that my parents established has now supported 47 students from agricultural communities, Olivia noted with particular pride. But its most significant impact isn't measured in numbers, but in the innovations these students have developed. Drought-resistant landscaping techniques now implemented across campus, a composting system that has reduced our food waste by 82%, and a water reclamation project that has cut Westridge's consumption by nearly half. In the audience, several scholarship students straightened visibly, their faces reflecting well-deserved pride in these accomplishments. Many had arrived at Westridge feeling as out of place as Olivia once had, only to discover that their practical knowledge and problem-solving abilities were precisely what the institution needed. The journey from exclusion to inclusion isn't a straight line, Olivia acknowledged. There have been setbacks and resistance, moments when it would have been easier to retreat to comfortable traditions rather than embrace the challenges of genuine change. But what makes me proudest of Westridge today is not that it's become perfect, it hasn't, but that it's become courageously self-reflective, willing to examine its assumptions and evolve its practices. Victoria Sinclair nodded again, her expression thoughtful. The headmistress, who had once embodied Westridge's exclusive traditions, had become an unlikely champion for institutional transformation, recognizing that her legacy would be defined not by maintaining the status quo, but by having the courage to lead change when it was needed. As we cut the ribbon on this new center today, we're not concluding a journey, but continuing one, Olivia emphasized. The questions we must keep asking ourselves are fundamental. Whose knowledge do we value? What forms of excellence do we recognize? How do we ensure that our definition of merit isn't simply a reflection of privilege? The audience listened attentively, many taking notes. Representatives from several other prestigious academies were present, seeking to understand how they might implement similar changes at their own institutions, where pressure was mounting to address deeply embedded systems of privilege and exclusion. "I'll conclude with a personal reflection," Olivia said, her voice softening slightly. "When I first arrived at Westridge, wearing clothes I had made myself from sustainable materials grown on our farm, I wasn't trying to make a statement or challenge the system. I was simply being authentic to my values and background. What I discovered was that authenticity itself can be revolutionary in environments built around conformity and appearances." She looked directly at a group of current students seated near the front, their diverse backgrounds reflected in their varied appearances and styles. "Your greatest contribution to any community isn't trying to fit a predetermined mold, but bringing your unique perspective and experiences to shared challenges. True innovation happens at these intersections of difference, where varied ways of knowing and being come together in pursuit of common goals." As Olivia concluded her remarks, the audience rose in a standing ovation. The young woman who had once been mocked for her simple clothes now stood as a symbol of how authentic leadership could transform an institution from within, not through confrontation alone, but through consistent, principled action and a willingness to build bridges across difference. The ceremony continued with the official ribbon cutting, performed jointly by representatives of various constituencies within the Westridge community: faculty, students, staff, alumni, and board members. This shared moment symbolized the collaborative approach that had become Westridge's hallmark under its revised mission statement: cultivating excellence through diversity of thought, experience, and contribution. After the formal proceedings, a reception was held in the center's collaborative workspace, a large, open area designed for cross-disciplinary projects. As guests mingled and explored the building's innovative features, Olivia found herself approached by a shy first-year student wearing a simple dress that hadn't come from any designer boutique. "Miss Bennett," the girl began, her rural accent still detectable despite obvious efforts to neutralize it. "I'm Sophia Martinez, one of the Bennett scholars. I just wanted to thank you personally. Where I come from, no one had ever heard of Westridge Academy, let alone thought someone like me could attend." Olivia smiled warmly. "I'm glad you're here, Sophia. How are you finding Westridge so far?" "Different than I expected," the girl admitted. "Better, actually. My roommate is from New York City, and we're nothing alike, but we're learning so much from each other. She's never seen how irrigation systems work, and I've never used public transportation. We're partnering on a project to develop urban farming techniques adapted from rural practices." "That's exactly the kind of collaboration we hope to foster," Olivia replied, genuinely pleased. The best solutions come from bringing different knowledge systems together. As they continued chatting, Victoria Sinclair approached, her expression bearing the gracious dignity that had become her hallmark in recent years. "Miss Martinez, would you mind if I borrowed Olivia for a moment? The board chairman is eager to speak with her." Sophia nodded quickly, still somewhat intimidated by the headmistress, despite Westridge's more inclusive culture. "Of course, Headmistress Sinclair. Thank you again, Miss Bennett." As the girl moved away, Victoria turned to Olivia with a thoughtful expression. She reminds me of you when you first arrived, the same quiet determination beneath the initial shyness. Except she was welcomed rather than dismissed, Olivia observed without accusation, simply stating a fact they both acknowledged. Yes, the headmistress agreed, surprising Olivia with her candor. A difference that reflects how far we've come, though not without considerable growing pains along the way. She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. I wanted to tell you something before I make the public announcement next month. I'll be retiring at the end of this academic year. That's significant news, Olivia replied. You've led Westridge through substantial changes. Changes I initially resisted, Victoria acknowledged with remarkable honesty. When you first arrived in my office, I saw only what didn't fit my narrow definition of a Westridge student. I missed entirely what you could contribute. She shook her head slightly, a rueful smile crossing her features. The great irony is that while I was judging you for not meeting our traditions of excellence, you were embodying a far more meaningful excellence than we had yet imagined. This level of self-reflection from the once rigid headmistress demonstrated perhaps the most profound transformation of all, her willingness to recognize and acknowledge her own growth. What matters isn't where we begin, but where we choose to go, Olivia offered. You could have doubled down on exclusivity when challenged. Instead, you found the courage to lead change, even when it meant questioning your own assumptions. Thank you for that generous interpretation, Victoria replied. Though we both know the initial motivation was less noble, the potential Bennett donation provided compelling incentive for institutional flexibility. Olivia smiled at this honest admission. Transformation rarely begins with pure motives on all sides. What matters is where the journey leads and whether we're willing to embrace the deeper changes that emerge along the way. Across the room, Catherine and James Bennett were engaged in conversation with several board members discussing the next phase of the partnership between Bennett Agricultural Enterprises and Westridge Academy. What had begun as a leveraged donation had evolved into a genuine collaboration with students participating in research projects at Bennett facilities and the company's scientists serving as mentors in Westridge's expanded science program. Madison Wells approached Olivia as Victoria, moved away to greet other guests. Now, in her first year at Stanford Business School, Madison had developed a special focus on agricultural supply chains and sustainable business practices, a direction no one could have predicted during her days as Westridge's social queen. Your speech was amazing, Madison said, embracing Olivia warmly. Though you were far too generous about my role in the transformation, I was terrible to you. You were playing by the rules you'd been taught, Olivia replied with characteristic generosity. What matters is how quickly you recognize the opportunity to create better ones. Madison nodded, her expression reflective. I think about that a lot, how easily I might have continued enforcing those harmful hierarchies if your family's jet hadn't landed that day. It took something dramatic to make me question assumptions I'd never even recognized as assumptions. That's how privilege often works, Olivia observed. It remains invisible to those who benefit from it until something disrupts the pattern. Well, I'm grateful for the disruption, Madison said sincerely, even if it was humbling at the time. I'm doing work now that actually matters, partnering with small-scale farmers to develop fair trade networks that benefit local communities. I never would have found that path if I'd stayed in my comfortable bubble of privilege. As they continued catching up, Emma Chen joined them, her MIT research notebook tucked under her arm, even at a social event. Sorry to interrupt, but Professor Abernathy is asking about our filtration system prototype, Olivia. He thinks it might be adaptable for the water quality issues they're facing in rural Michigan. Olivia excused herself, following Emma toward a group of scientists gathered around one of the center's research displays. The proud smile Catherine Bennett directed toward her daughter as she passed captured a mother's recognition of her child's growth into a young woman of substance and purpose. Later, as the reception was winding down, James Bennett found a moment alone with his daughter in the center's rooftop garden, where native plants demonstrated sustainable landscaping practices, adapted to changing climate conditions. "Quite a day," he observed, gazing out over the Westridge campus. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years since that formal." "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Olivia replied. "And sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. So much has changed." "Not just at Westridge," her father noted. "You've changed too, grown into a leader in your own right, not because of your connection to us, but through your own authentic voice and vision." Olivia smiled, appreciating her father's recognition of her independent path. While she remained deeply connected to her family's work, she had developed her own research focus, combining agricultural technology with community-based implementation strategies that ensured innovations reached those who needed them most, rather than remaining confined to wealthy markets. "I learned from the best," she acknowledged. "You and Mum always emphasized that true success means creating value for others, not just accumulating it for yourself." James nodded, his expression thoughtful as he surveyed the sustainable building that bore the Bennett name, not as a monument to donor vanity, but as a working center for collaborative innovation. "When your mother arrived in that jet, she wasn't trying to make a statement about our wealth or status. She was defending her daughter's dignity and challenging an institution to live up to its own professed values." "I know," Olivia said softly. "Though I have to admit, her timing was impeccable." They shared a quiet laugh, the kind that comes from years of family understanding. The dramatic entrance of the Bennett jet had become something of a legend at Westridge, though the reality behind the story, the genuine hurt of a young woman judged unfairly, and the protective response of parents who valued her authentic self, was more nuanced than most retellings suggested. "The jet made them look," James reflected, "but it was your consistent example that made them see." Never underestimate the power of quiet authenticity, Olivia. It changes more hearts than any dramatic gesture ever could. As evening fell over Westridge Academy, the Sustainable Innovation Center glowed from within, its lights powered by the solar array that had been designed and optimized by a team including both faculty experts and scholarship students from farming backgrounds. The building stood as a testament to what was possible when institutions embraced diverse perspectives and recognized excellence in its many forms. In the years that followed, Westridge's transformation would continue to evolve, facing new challenges and developing new approaches. The Bennett Scholarship Program would expand to include students from urban farming initiatives alongside those from rural communities. The curriculum would continue to integrate theoretical knowledge with practical application, preparing graduates to address complex environmental and social challenges with both intellectual rigor and real-world understanding. Madison Wells would complete her MBA and go on to establish an investment fund focused exclusively on sustainable agricultural enterprises in underserved communities, reconnecting capital with rural innovation in ways that challenged traditional power dynamics. Emma Chen would partner with Olivia on a groundbreaking water filtration system that combined cutting-edge technology with implementation strategies accessible to communities with limited resources. Victoria Sinclair would retire with a legacy, far different from the one she had once envisioned, remembered not for maintaining Westridge's exclusive traditions, but for having the courage to lead its evolution toward more inclusive excellence. Her replacement would be a woman whose background in both academia and practical innovation embodied the integrated approach Westridge now valued. and Olivia Bennett would continue her work at the intersection of technological innovation and community implementation, developing solutions that addressed environmental challenges while ensuring that benefits were equitably distributed. Her approach would come to be recognized as a model for inclusive innovation, technological advancement that prioritized accessibility and addressed systemic inequities rather than reinforcing them. 10 years after the dedication of the Sustainable Innovation Center, Olivia would return to Westridge to teach a special seminar on agricultural technology and climate resilience. Walking across the campus, where she had once been mocked for her simple clothes, she would encounter a student body, so diverse in background and perspective that the narrow social hierarchies of the past seemed not just wrong, but incomprehensible. The transformation that had begun with one family's refusal to accept artificial limitations on their daughter's potential had expanded into something far more significant, an institutional commitment to recognizing excellence in its many forms and creating space for multiple knowledge systems to contribute to shared goals. In her first lecture to Westridge students, Olivia would share a reflection that captured the essence of her journey and the broader transformation it had catalyzed. Change begins not with grand strategies, but with momentary choices to stand in your truth, even when it contradicts prevailing norms. It continues when others find the courage to question assumptions they've long taken for granted. And it becomes sustainable when institutions create structures that value diverse contributions rather than enforcing narrow definitions of merit or worth. The clothes we wear, the vehicles we drive, the accents in our voices, these superficial markers tell others nothing about our capacity for innovation, our commitment to excellence, or our potential contribution to addressing the challenges we face together. True value lies in the substance of character, the originality of thought, and the willingness to collaborate across difference in pursuit of common goals. The future belongs not to those who maintain comfortable hierarchies, but to those with the courage to imagine new ways of recognizing and nurturing human potential in all its diverse manifestations. And it begins with each of us having the courage to be authentically ourselves, even when that authenticity challenges the expectations of others. As she would look out over the diverse faces of Westridge students, some from wealthy urban centers, others from rural farming communities, all engaged in collaborative learning, Olivia would see the living embodiment of this philosophy. The transformation that had begun with her own quiet dignity in the face of mockery had rippled outward, creating space for many forms of excellence to flourish and contribute. And though few of these students would know the full story of how Olivia Bennett's homemade clothes and her family's private jet had catalyzed Westridge's evolution, all of them would benefit from the more inclusive definition of excellence that had emerged from that pivotal moment of confrontation and growth. For in the end, the true measure of transformation isn't found in buildings or programs, important as these may be. It lies in the expanded possibilities available to each person who enters an institution, the opportunity to be valued not for conformity to predetermined expectations, but for the unique perspective and contribution they bring to shared challenges. This was the lasting legacy of Olivia Bennett's journey at Westridge Academy, not a reversal of fortune or a triumph of wealth over prejudice, but a fundamental reimagining of how excellence might be recognized, valued, and nurtured in all its diverse and authentic forms. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.